There's a lot going on in this movie.
It was like I was watching it for the first time.
I like this movie.
It has a special place in my heart.
Very close to my heart.
This was a good one.
I want to like this movie.
What? Seriously?
I loved it.
Very flat, kind of boring.
This movie blows me away. This movie turns me on.
Terrible. It is terrible. All these keys everywhere. Influences, baby.
Huge fan.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Hello and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, hence the graphics you see on your YouTube screen or hear through your radio or device waves. This is a podcast where two guys get together. We talk about horror and science fiction films and television, key influences, hence the title of Keys, on that particular topic of the week, and then things that topic influenced down the road. We've been doing it for quite a few years. In fact, we also have a website and a Patreon and all kinds of stuff. And we're so glad that you're joining us. If you're new, please let us know. Even just a little comment down in the below that says, hey, I'm new. That works for us, or what you thought about it, or think about the episode, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. And if you're rejoining us, so glad you're back. Welcome to the comfort of the Key Guys. And my name is David. I'm here with my good friend Tim, and we're going to jump into some stuff today. Tim, what have you been doing? What's your week been like?
Oh my goodness. Hello, everyone out there. Just wanted to remind you, this is a very special episode, David. You want to know why?
No, why?
It's the 7th episode of our 7th season.
Oh, numerology at work.
Yes. I just happened to catch that. We normally start these little episodes with what we've done in our genre week, or something that we may have seen that's genre related that week. And I watched a little movie on Shudder called Lucky.
Okay.
You see that title there? There we go.
Yeah.
Didn't feel so lucky watching this movie.
Unlucky, the movie, yes.
I really did not like this movie. It gets points for attempting originality because it uses this whole Groundhog Day-esque scenario, only it's with a home invader every night breaking into a woman's house. Yeah. And she lives there with her boyfriend or husband. I think it's her husband. And this person breaks into her house every night and tries to kill her. And there's a different scenario each time because it's very much like the movie Groundhog Day. But the problem with it is it quickly devolves into just a character study of this woman and where she is in her life or whatever. So it's really not a horror movie, even though it has some gore and some scares. It's not a horror movie. It's directed by a woman named Natasha Kermani. I'm not familiar with her, but it does star Bray Grant, who people will recognize from Friday Night Lights. And she also wrote the movie. So Bray wrote it, starred in it, and Natasha directed it.
It's a thriller, but not horror?
Well, I mean, it's got some horror moments, but like I said, it evolves into a caricature study on her because no one seems to believe her because the guy's body always disappears. She can kill him, but the minute she turns her head, he's gone. So, and then the next day it starts all over.
Okay. He was the boogeyman.
The synopsis is a self-help book author. There you go, right there. She's a self-help book author. Finds herself stalked by a threatening figure who returns to her house night after night. She is forced to take matters into her own hands when she can't get help from those around her. The reason I watch this movie is it gets 93% on Rotten Tomatoes with 69 reviews.
I've told you.
Well, I do disagree with them sometimes, and I disagree with them with this. I would give this maybe a 70. It's a bit of a slog. I mean, it really is, especially when they get into she's identifying this within herself or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know, whatever. So that's what I did. I watched Unlucky. So.
Well, In the same vein, I watched something. I sat down. It was interesting because I was going, okay, I need to just veg. I need to watch something, maybe something I haven't seen, maybe something I've seen, and stumbled upon something and said, I haven't seen that in a long time. Let me watch it again because I remember being conflicted about it, but I also remember other friends like Wynn saying it was his favorite. So, let me see. I watched a little thing that came out in 1970. It was written by Paul Dean and Mort Abrams, stars James Franciscus, Kim Hunter, and Maurice Evans.
It's Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Woo, ding.
We had done Planet of the Apes. I think we did it, what, 2 years ago? Something like that? Did we do Planet of the Apes?
Planet of the Apes was very first season, and it is due for a redux. That's one of my favorite movies.
Yes, and I know how much you like it. And Wynn always said he preferred Beneath to Planet.
Really?
So I was going, okay. So I watched this movie. It was, first of all, this movie is directed by Ted Post. Ted Post has, out of his 92 IMDb credits, has not one that's any good. So he was a television director, basically, and doing just a brief little research on this. I mean, this was a thrown together project. The first one was so successful. Hey, let's get on the bandwagon. Let's do another one right now. We have all these ape costumes left over. Let's use them. Charlton Heston is the best part of this movie, really.
He's only in it a very brief amount of time.
And he's in it for like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
It is. I would be curious to have you watch it again because
have. I've got all 5 of the original movies, and I've watched it the most as far as sequels.
And what do you think about it?
I mean, I like the and this is probably what Wendell liked, is that it's a little more sci-fi because it goes into the whole worshiping of the bomb stuff and the weird cult underneath the surface and the radiation sickness of those people. But it's not in the vein of like the new Planet of the Apes movies. It's not, the apes are not the central focus in it at all. And it's like, it's a Planet of the Apes sequel where there's really not a lot of ape.
Yeah, agreed.
So, I mean, that would give me some problems. I don't remember disliking it as much as I do the ones that followed it. Like 3, 4, and 5.
And now I'm going to have to go back because I seem to remember I really liked Conquest. Is that the one where
I can't remember.
Where he basically takes over? That's the one where apes are all pets because all the dogs and cats got killed. So that's how they became slaves.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I think that's the one, Conquest for the Planet of the Apes, I think is the name of it. Anyway, I seem to remember liking that one.
There's one where like Cornelius and Zira live in humanity and they have a baby.
That's the one before it. So you've got Planet, Beneath, Escape. That's where they come to modern day and they end up being hunted and they have a baby named Caesar, I think is his name.
I think it is named Caesar, actually.
Then Conquest is Caesar's uprising. It's really the Battle of the Apes. It's when the apes.
And Battle's the last one.
And Battle is the last one. And it's basically it's where they form their culture because they rebel against the gorillas.
Yeah, I need to rewatch those.
So I remember the latter ones I like a lot better. This one, I seem to remember, I love this movie. It's so good. It's good science fiction. And it's not. It's really not very good. It's very tedious. Things just don't make sense at all. I mean, this one guy crashes in the same ship as Taylor.
It's like part 2 of the first movie. Yeah. Another spaceship lands on the same planet. Yeah, I remember that.
And Nova just happens to come over the ridge and see him on a horse. And she knows Taylor. So she takes him to the ape village and he's able to sneak into Zira and Cornelius's house and talk to them. I'm just going, this is like the television series.
Well, and that's basically what the television series ended up being, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He stumbles across the general who's doing the whole anti-human, they all must die. And that was, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now, but he was really good as the general. But
Is it the guy from
and
Barney Miller?
yes,
I can't
yes.
think of his name either, but I know who you're
I
talking
can't
about.
either. It's yeah, whatever his name was.
Well,
He was
good. Cheers to you for watching an old movie. I try to do that often, and you're usually doing the newer stuff.
I'm
Today I
usually
did a
doing
new
newer
one, you
stuff,
did an
so
old one.
I thought I'd try and see. But yeah, but neither one of us really liked them. So that was it. It wasn't mostly because I mean you didn't like yours because it really wasn't horror. I didn't like mine because it really wasn't science fiction. It tried, but it
Well,
wasn't
and
good.
that's a very
So
good segue for our topic today because several people do not like the movie today because it's not really a horror movie either. It just happens to
nope.
be written by Stephen King, and it is a little movie called Mr. Harrigan's Phone.
Mm-hmm.
I would describe, and I will give a brief synopsis, but first I would describe this movie as a very good drama with supernatural elements or potential supernatural elements. Something King does really well. And I happen to really like this movie. But anyway, let me do a brief synopsis. Basically, you've got a kid that loses his mother at a young age. His name is
Mm-hmm.
Craig. And one day, an older town patriarch, I guess you would say, he's a reclusive retired businessman named Mr. Harrigan, is losing his eyesight and starts paying Craig to read books to him.
Mm-hmm.
This is set at the turn of the century, around 2001, 2003, somewhere before all the technology that we have today. As a matter of fact, iPhones were just coming out in this movie. So he's
Yes.
reading to Mr. Harrigan for several years. They become friends. And Mr. Harrigan gives him lottery tickets for Christmas, which I found kind of funny. And the boy just happens to win $3,000 with one. And he
Mm-hmm.
decides he wants to get a phone. Unfortunately, he doesn't know his dad's already bought him a phone for Christmas. But he ends up taking the money and buying Mr. Harrigan a phone too. At first, Mr. Harrigan balks, saying he doesn't like modern technology. It's a bunch of hogwash. But as soon as he finds out he can see the stock market live, as opposed to waiting a day to read it in the paper, he
Mm-hmm.
becomes thoroughly addicted to this phone, which is some of the major subtexts as far as the story is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Since he is an old man, he dies. And they were already friends, but they get closer because of their phones. He has his own ringtone for Mr. Harrigan, which is "Stand by Your Man," Tammy Wynette.
Mm-hmm.
And he just thinks it would be a really cool gesture, I guess, to at the very end of the funeral walk up and slip Mr. Harrigan's phone into his jacket pocket so that he's buried with it. This is when you get into like the Edgar Allan Poe stuff. Because all of a sudden, Craig starts getting messages from beyond the grave via this telephone. Usually it's a jumbled text of just a bunch of letters that really don't make any sense. There is one truly horrific moment in a thunderstorm where the phone actually rings and it's "Stand by Your Man."
Mm-hmm.
Craig has a problem with a bully at school. He calls up Mr. Harrigan in the grave and says, "Look, I don't have anybody to talk to. I just want to let you, this guy's really help bothering me." And the next thing you know, the guy's dead. And then later on, a teacher that Craig is very fond of is killed in a drunk driving accident. A drunk driver hits her and he gets really mad and talks to Mr. Harrigan about that guy too. And that guy ends up dead. Anyway, it's a morality tale. I won't go into any more details. I mean, it really doesn't have a big climatic ending. So, but this is the gist of the story. And I'm under the impression you have never seen this movie before, correct?
I had never seen it nor read the novella or the short story.
Okay. I read the book first, and the story blew me away just reading the story. So I was really looking forward to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of it?
I'm like you and or like most other people. No, I do not think it is a horror movie.
It's not.
It had two quasi jump scares, but everything else was not even tension really in it. I did like the sequence with the car accident just because there was some tension there, and it was, you were knowing something was going to happen, but you didn't know what, and blah, blah, blah. And it was good. It doesn't look good. So there was moments there, but I kept wanting more. And part of that was just the name. With Stephen King attached, I was wanting more. I was wanting more, I guess, almost like a Pet Cemetery thing. I have in my notes, I kept thinking that somehow, what's the lead? What's his name? Craig. I kept thinking Craig was going to somehow get on Mr. Harrigan's bad side after he had died. I thought he was going to somehow piss him off, because there were several references in that early first half hour with the Harrigan characters saying, if anybody ever opposes me, they suffer, or stop your bullies quickly, or whatever. It was all this threatening feel to him, how he got where he is in business, being so wealthy. And so as the movie went on, I kept thinking, oh, Craig's going to do something and piss him off. And now suddenly he's going to be fighting this guy from the grave. But that never happened.
No, that would be very Hammer-esque.
Right. And then looking back at it, I thought, well, why didn't he even play off the thing of, why didn't the screenplay play off the fact that, is Craig really imagining this or not? Is this really happening or not? Is he just seeing circumstances and then blaming it on Mr. Harrigan or not? But they didn't even do that convoluted thing. I thought it had some great stuff to it, and other stuff I was going, I don't understand what he's really trying to tell me here or say. And I don't know how accurate it is to the novel, so I'm not sure.
It's very accurate. As a matter of fact, it's almost like I don't know, a storyboard of it. It's very, very accurate to the novel. And so I read the story first. Maybe that explains some of the reason why I like it so much. But it's like Stephen King said, fuck this phone. I'm addicted to this phone. Everybody's addicted to their phones. How can I tell a story about this? And this is the story that came as a result.
But
because he only knows how to tell something somewhat scary.
Didn't he do another one where the phone makes people go mad, start killing people?
Yeah, there was a really poorly received zombie book called Cell. That a signal goes out through cell phones that basically turns people into zombies. So to me, that's a horror movie, and that's definitely your subject matter is bad phones, or phones are bad, or whatever. This to me felt much more, and it's really a key, much more of the apt pupil thing. This is much more of a mentor-mentee relationship and how it develops and feels. It's more sentimentalized, and it's actually a really great story between the two of them. Yeah, and apt pupil's a great key. I didn't put that down. However, I do have different seasons as a key, because to me, the book that this came from is like the modern day equivalent to different seasons.
Okay, I've never read any of it.
Well, first of all, he has written more than 2 novels with 4 novellas in them. He's written like 5 or 6 probably. Okay. But Different Seasons was his first, and If It Bleeds is his most recent. And to me, they kind of mirror each other, because they have such strong stories in them that all of them are being made into movies. 3 of Different Seasons have been made into movies, and 2 of If It Bleeds have already been made into movies, and 1 is already optioned to be made into a movie. So it's going to have 3 from it too. So that I didn't mean to jump ahead to Keys, but I see a strong relation between the book this came from and the book that Apt Pupil came from.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, we'll get into that when we get into Keys.
Sure.
I do. So my reaction is very convoluted. I would recommend this movie for people to watch. I would set it up as, it's not a horror movie, but enjoy it.
It's got some spooky moments.
Some spooky, but not really scary, and the supernatural elements of it don't really pay off in my opinion.
Well, and
Because it's
that may be part of. I mean, I know that's why people don't like it, because it is not a horror movie, and Netflix or anybody that associates Stephen King with horror movies is going to jump in assuming it's a horror movie.
right, right.
And it really isn't. And even the picture of the poster has Craig with his face against the dirt of Mr. Harrigan's grave, which is creepy in itself.
Yeah.
Scenes? What scenes? I guess if we're going to go by our usual format, what scenes stick out to you? I can tell you one immediately.
Well, go ahead.
The scene where Craig goes into the cafeteria, and it's been a year or a few years since cell phones have come out, and no one is talking. Everybody is sitting at a table staring at their phone.
Yep.
That is so telling. And it's like, first of all, John Lee Hancock is the guy that directed this. You could tell he knew what King was trying to say with this by that scene alone, right there.
Yes. And that was an impressive scene. I agree with that one, especially because he had set it up earlier with Craig's first day and them talking about don't go to the iPhone table, go over here with all of us. And then there's the jocks and that whole segregation you always get in high schools. So that was interesting to see then a year later, the development into this, we're all in our own little segregated worlds, which was great. One of my favorite scenes, which is Harrigan talking about the perils of this phone and the internet in general. And that whole speech is so good.
It is
Donald
awesome.
Sutherland is so well delivered, and it's everything that has happened.
I was just wondering how long it took Stephen King to write that paragraph, because you know he had to perfect it, because it is spot on, exactly predicting what phones will do when they become popular,
and how addictive they will be, and what
will happen with news and our communication of news and all that stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Oh yeah, it was. So that's one of my favorite scenes. You already mentioned one, which is the
thunderstorm scene.
The thunderstorm scene, and a little out of order though, finding the body. That scene was well done. I mean, we know it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, if you look at reviews of this movie and read some of them or watch some of them on YouTube or whatever, they talk about, I mean, for people that don't like it, really don't like it, they say, I'm just waiting for the guy to die so that we can get to the scary stuff. And then it doesn't come. That's what they all say. But the
then
way
you and I wasn't waiting for him to die, because I think that he is one of the best parts of this movie. Donald Sutherland is excellent. He is acting royalty.
He's phenomenal in this. Yeah. But Jaden Martell's reactions all through that, the door's unlocked and I go in and everything else, and we all know or suspect or are afraid of what's happened. But just the way it's done is so well done. And that going into the whole funeral and then the burial, I mean, the church and then the burial and everything.
It's really hard for me to pick scenes, because I love this movie so much. I think this is an understated classic, honestly. I think that it could go on to be big in history. Every scene, well, first of all, every scene with Donald Sutherland is flawless, but the scenes with his father are great too, because they're kind of the opposite, because he almost looks to Mr. Harrigan more as a dad, and his dad's getting left behind. Even in the scene where his dad had him a phone for Christmas, but he's already bought one. And you're like, oh, I mean.
There's a lot of that feeling of a single father, and how during high school you lose the connection. And they're doing their own thing, and you hope they remember you as the dad you were. Yeah. So there's a lot.
It's a coming of age story. I mean, obviously we see Jaden. Yes. I mean, we see Jaden come in to play the part, but he starts off being played by another actor as he is younger when the mother died. So you have a smaller, younger boy playing him, and then Jaden grows into him.
So it's interesting. You just said, and it's another one of my keys, but going back, it's a Stephen King's key. But this movie to me was more similar to Stand By Me in that.
I've already got all that shit written down.
Well,
I knew you would pick up on it.
Yeah, it's a coming of age, not a horror movie. The fear in this is not coming from really not coming from the supernatural. It's coming from Jaden's coming of age and technology in general.
Right.
Stand By Me is, hey, you want to go see a dead body. And it's the adventure of these
But then
boys.
you've also got a bully, and then you've
Yeah.
also got their triumphing over the bully or whatever. And
Which King always does well. King always
right.
portrays his bullies really well, whether it's
Mhm.
a middle-aged or old bully or a young kid bully. He's really good at that.
Yeah.
And I just think this movie was marketed wrong. I think like you said, I think the poster's wrong. I think the marketing is wrong. If this is set up as, if you like Stand By Me, you'll love Mr. Harrigan's Phone.
Well, I don't think there was any marketing. I mean, it was a Netflix movie. It just came on.
But when you look it up, it's listed as a horror movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's pigeonholing Stephen King. I mean, is Stand By Me listed as a horror movie? I don't know. It may be.
I certainly hope not.
But I mean, and again, back to what I was saying with the mirroring of different seasons and If It Bleeds, to me, this story mirrors Stand By Me. And to me, Stand By Me really doesn't end either. He just caps it with so-and-so went on to do this, so-and-so got killed in a bar fight, so-and-so whatever, and that's the end, basically. I'm a writer, Richard Dreyfuss, I'm going to go stand up and play with my kids. That's how that movie ends. Yeah. And that, so it does maybe have a better ending. This movie, the one thing I could see people being not happy with is the ending of this movie, because there really is no climax to it.
No.
Yeah. No. But I still love it because it's a slice of life, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's not the typical formula for a movie.
Correct. I think people, especially if you are a thrill seeker, this is not a movie for you. If you're a big, huge horror fan, this is not a movie for you, because the whole beginning is more literature based and more interpersonal relationships, even through
character
his relationship with the teacher. That's a character study and relationships and all of that. And clever, the way he took all of this famous literature and put it into almost a narration, but not a narration. The excerpts that he actually picked were really interesting, where he placed them in the movie with the relationship between Craig and Mr. Harrigan. So I thought that was really cool. Sutherland, of course, was brilliant. Jaden Martell,
oh my God,
great.
They're filled with radiation.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the first thing he thinks of when he sees that phone. They're filled with radiation.
Yep.
I neglected to mention in production that it was directed by John Lee Hancock. This guy is not a horror movie director. There you go. This is an Academy Award winning director. He directed The Blind Side. He also directed Saving Mr. Banks. Another thing that surprised me about this movie is two of the producers. Did you notice this?
I don't think so.
The producers were Ryan Murphy, who you've heard me talk about being hit and miss. He's the big gay producer, horror guy. And he does Horror Story and other things as well, Crime Story. But also Jason Blum.
Oh,
Blumhouse.
I didn't see that. Okay, Blumhouse.
So, yeah, I mean, it's produced by people that are familiar with the genre, but I think they were also probably lovers of the story. And that may be why that happened. It was written by John Lee Hancock based on the Stephen King story, so that's why I said it's very close to the story. I think he may have even talked to Stephen King while he was doing it. It seems like I read that. However, and this is a pet peeve I won't stay on too long. This movie receives 45% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that is insane. I think that is idiotic. Do what?
Compared to Lucky?
Right. Compared to Lucky, the one I just said got 90 something. This, but it only gets 6 out of 10 on IMDb. And I get it. It's not a horror movie, but it's still a great movie. I don't give a shit what these people think.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a great movie. I would still recommend the movie. I wouldn't say it's great. I'm not a fan. I like his other two movies. I don't like this movie from a directorial standpoint. I don't like his
Interesting.
lighting. I don't like his lighting. I don't like his use of close-ups. He tends to almost every scene with the teacher is done in this close-up, and I kept asking, like 15 minutes into it, I go, why is he keep doing these intense close-ups of her, patching up him at the prom or what the dance or whatever, and doing all
Probably
this?
trying to
And
establish that she's a character that's going to bite it in the,
right.
yeah.
And so by the time it happens and she dies, oh, spoiler alert, you go, oh, that's why he did that, because he wanted to endear her to us, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't work for me. It pulled me out of it because I was going, I don't understand why you haven't done that with anybody else. You haven't done that with Sutherland, or you haven't done that with Jaden Martell or his dad. Everybody's in this medium shot that's kind of nice and it works and it tells the story. But suddenly we're in this big, huge close up of her all the time. And I didn't know why. So that threw me off.
What do you think of
And
the
I
music?
nondescript to me. So it's
Okay.
not in my notes.
So
So I'm
I
not
like the
sure.
music a lot. It's very subtle piano mostly. And then when it
Hmm.
starts getting to the spookier stuff, it starts getting off kilter where it's almost like creep show, that kind of music, especially in that
Hmm.
thunderstorm scene.
I'm going to take a note and go back then and look at that because that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
It really gets creep show-esque, I noticed, when he leaves the message on the phone for the dead Mr. Harrigan. Anyway,
Okay.
that's what I have as far as production. We've already mentioned some scenes. I can't really think of any other scenes, but that don't really just revolve around cast. So I can move on to cast if you
Sure.
want. We've mentioned Donald Sutherland plays Mr. Harrigan. He is, I mean, he's a national treasure. He's been around forever. The first movie that I always go to in my head with him is Animal House for some reason, where he plays the teacher. But he is, well, he was in Clute, he was in MASH, he was in The Dirty Dozen. I recently saw him in Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, which is a Hammer movie, or an
Hmm.
Amicus movie. I think it's an Amicus movie. And we've covered him. We last saw him together in The Hunger Games, which was something we did a few seasons back.
President
And
Snow.
we are
Yep.
most likely going to cover him in the future because he is also in Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well as Don't Look Now, a big
Hmm.
sci-fi and a big horror classic movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, he's the father of Kiefer Sutherland for all you young folks out there who is not really that young anymore. He was in The Lost Boys as well as that show that was so popular, 24, on television.
Yep. Hmm.
So Donald Sutherland. We have Jaden Martell playing Craig. Now, Jaden is a very familiar face because he plays another Stephen King character very similar to this one. He
Hmm.
plays Bill Denbrough in It, or Denborough, I think is how you
Denver.
pronounce it,
Yep.
in It, the remake that Andy Machete did a few years back, parts 1 and part 2. He is the young Bill Denborough. He is 21 now. His acting career began with a commercial for Hot Wheels. I didn't even know they did commercials for Hot Wheels anymore.
I didn't either, but there you go.
But anyway, that's all I know him from because he's very, very young. But I think he is awesome. I think he is really, really good.
Yeah, he
Another
is
person
strong.
I think is
He is a River Phoenix-esque quality to him that I think is good. Yeah.
right. He's less tough and more tender, though, I would say, than River is.
Well,
But
so
yeah,
go
River
more
could do
toward,
both.
yeah, River could do both, so it's
Right.
fine. Yeah.
Joe Tippett, the guy that plays Craig's dad, I was blown away by him. I thought, this guy
Mhm.
is awesome. What do I know him from? I couldn't find much. He's got 22 credits out there, nothing really that I've ever heard of. The only thing I know is that he's engaged to the singer actress Sarah Bareilles,
Mm-hmm.
who I do know. I'd recognize her face in a heartbeat. So this Joe Tippett guy, I really liked him. I mentioned the young Craig was played by Colin O'Brien. Mrs. Hart was played by Kirby, but
Yep.
now she goes by, or back then she went by Kirby Howell Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
She is a British actress. She was on Killing Eve, but she was also on Veronica Mars. I don't know if you watched that show. I didn't.
I watched a few. She looked so familiar to me, and I kept going, where have I met? It's like you were with Tippett. I was going, I've seen him before. Where have I seen him? I don't know.
Right. She's very pretty too.
Yeah, I looked her up. What I know her from is, I think, one that I talked about last year before. She's in Sandman, the
Oh,
television series.
okay.
She
I
plays
saw the
Death.
first season.
She plays Death. Remember the big scene where he's talking with her? She's a sibling of Sandman, and she's the one that sits with the guy at the bench telling him that he should get up and play with the ball now because he doesn't know how much time he might have or whatever. It's really a great scene. That episode, she's only in one episode, but she plays
Okay.
Death in
I
Sandman.
do
That's where I
remember
know her
that
from.
episode. I just don't remember the face. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's great. Love her. And
Yep.
then the only other person that bears mentioning is the kid that plays Kenny Yankovic or Yankovic.
Yeah.
They
Hi,
call
the
him
bully.
Yanko, don't they? Yanko or Yank. Yeah, I think
Yep.
they call him Yanko. He's played by a guy named Cyrus Arnold. He is the one of the best looking bullies I think I've ever seen in a movie.
To me, he was the most realistic looking bully I've
That's what
ever
I mean.
seen.
I don't mean best
Yeah.
looking by good looking. I mean best looking by terrifying because
Yeah.
he is so creepy. He looks like a heavy set Joey Ramone from the Ramones.
Hmm. Yeah.
All in black, tall, bushy hair, just mean and ugly looking.
And the way his inflection and looks and everything else, that borderline, I can't tell if he's pissed off or afraid or angry. I don't know what's happening. He's
Yeah.
always very off kilter, which
Give me
was
your phone.
great.
Let me see your phone. I
Yeah.
was like, do not give him your phone.
Yeah. No, do not do it. Don't do it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really
Anyway,
good.
his name is Cyrus Arnold. I don't have any credits for other movies. I did notice that he is still working and stuff, though. So I have a feeling he's going to be around for a while.
Good.
As far as awards, this movie is not up for or won any because I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a bias with direct to streaming movies. I don't think you
Oh,
see
yeah.
a lot of awards for those kind. And this movie is only 2 years old. And I've seen it 3 times. So that shows you how much I like it. I've seen it 3 times in 2 years.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think there's a bias. And I definitely think it's always going to be. Was this a direct to stream or was this a Netflix? Was this Netflix?
this was Netflix.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
And also, I meant to mention that the reason, I mean, it could potentially be on 1001 Movies You Must See, but they are only updated through like 2019, and this movie came out in like 2021, so it's too late. It's a very current movie, so it may
Yeah.
end up on the list in the future. But as far as awards, it's not garnered anything. So
Well, again, I think if you say Ryan Murphy, Blumhouse, and Stephen King in your trailer, and then show this movie, your expectations are not going to be met. I don't think. It's just my feeling about it.
by
So you
them,
can no by anybody watching it because those are huge horror names,
oh yeah. Because
and
I
that's
have not
what's
looked to see how King felt about it, but I have a
yeah, but
feeling
that's
he
what's in
liked
the
it.
trailer is coming from Stephen King,
Right.
Ryan Murphy, da da da, and you're like, oh my gosh, duh, and then you watch it and go, this isn't scary. It's not what I expected, and I
I
think they
told
could have.
you
Go ahead.
a while back. I don't have it. I should have put it in my notes, but I sent you a review of this a while back where the guy says, "Put down your phone and watch this movie because you
Yeah.
may not realize that you're missing a really good movie." I love how he attacks people for
Yeah.
using their phone while watching a movie. Before we move on to keys, do you have any trivia or anything you want to mention?
I do not. Even in doing research from this, it seemed like it was a fairly easy production. It seemed like it was well done, and he had all of his ducks in a row as far as
I
elements
think he's a
go.
professional. I think he's used to doing
So,
big movies. Yeah.
yeah,
I have one
and
thing.
yeah,
This was a Stephen King entry on X, formerly known as Twitter, where
yes.
he reached out one day and said, "Hey, what do y'all think those text messages were?" And he said, tune in tomorrow. And so people were like, what were they? Because they were just jumbled letters that supposedly Mr. Harrigan was texting on his phone to Craig from the grave. And King said, this is just my interpretation. I was never 100% sure. But the CCCX was love from Mr. Harrigan.
Mm-hmm.
The CCCAA was it hurts. It hurts, as in And the CCCST was Craig, stop.
Stop. Yeah.
And he said, almost everyone agrees with this, and I do too.
Yeah, I would agree
I think
with
that's
that.
cool that you finally realized that there was some subtext to that gibberish that he was texting.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think maybe in that third act, a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more suspicion of, is this all in Craig's mind? And it might have been a way to increase the dad's role, to have him say, I'm worried about you because blah, blah, blah. And no, that's just a glitch in the phone. It's not somebody texting you from the grave, Craig, come on. So maybe that would have given it something in that last act that maybe, like you said, there's no climax. There's no definite yes or no, because Craig does stop. He throws the phone away. So never know. We have to dive into that quarry to find out if Mr.
Well, they
Harrigan
do,
is still
and
dead.
he does tease you a little bit, like Craig's going to kill himself, and you're like, no, he's
Yeah.
not. He's going to throw that phone in there, and that's what he does. He gets rid of
Yeah.
the phone, so he never has to talk to Mr. Harrigan again. Segueing to keys, this is a key, but not really, because it's not referencing a movie or a book, but the whole scene where, and I can't think of the guy's name that played the drunk driver. I don't know that I have it in my notes. The whole scene leading up to his hitting the car
Miss
with
Hart.
Mrs. Hart in it. That whole scene was like him paying homage to when Stephen King got hit by the van.
Yep.
Wasn't there a dog in the car?
I don't remember, but I think so. I mean,
I
that's
can't
one thing I've
remember
got
either.
in
It's
my
been a
keys
minute.
is Stephen King is King's accident. He really
Right,
doesn't like
but
car
the thing
crashes.
is, the guy's jumbling around and not paying attention to the road. He's looking at his phone. He's looking at trash. There may be a dog in the car. I can't remember. And it just reminded me of that is exactly what was happening when Stephen King got hit. In Stephen King's case, there were two dogs, I think, in the car trying to get into a cooler at the guy's lunch or something, and he was trying to stop them, and that's when he ran over Stephen King. But anyway, that whole thing reminded me of that event.
Oh, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have other key?
Well, of course, you alluded to it already, but Edgar Allan Poe, the whole almost like a telltale heart, this could have been kind of thing. What does guilt do to you, or longing, loneliness? It's a very Poe-esque story, I think.
Yeah, the whole communication from the grave to me is a Poe thing. Telltale Heart, though, I was trying to think of the story, and I guess Telltale Heart would probably be the closest story that I can recall.
Probably, maybe Legia. Isn't that or the Black Cat? Same
Or
thing.
if it's or Lovecraft, it could be Rats in the Walls.
Yeah. But it's that whole like you said, communication from the grave. Yeah, that's a big one, which is my second biggest key.
And whether or not it's real or not, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that in this story, they don't hint at whether or not it's real or not enough. I mean, we're pretty much sure that Craig is totally convinced that this guy is calling him from the grave.
Well, it's sealed by Tammy Wynette.
Well,
I mean, as soon as that phone rings and it's Stand By Your Man, and then that phone with that ringtone is buried in a cemetery. I mean, that's pretty freaking scary.
Yep.
Even if you don't have a thunderstorm.
Which is my second biggest key, which is Twilight Zone. Nightcaller, the episode Nightcaller in Twilight Zone. Because when I was watching it, I remembered something. I was going, because I remember a movie, and I've mentioned it before, called I Saw What You Did, which was, or I
Mm-hmm.
Know What You Did, or whatever. But anyway, that's the girls doing the prank call. They just happened to call the guy that just murdered his wife. So now he's going to start stalking them and try to kill them because he thinks that they know what he did. There's a Night Caller. There's a Twilight Zone episode called Night Caller. I looked it up. Written by your favorite, Mr. Matheson.
Okay.
Directed
I think
by
I have it in a book.
Directed by Jacques Tourneau, who did Cat People.
Okay.
And it's about a woman who starts getting these phone calls late at night. At first, they're just static. Then she starts hearing a man's voice. She's just like this disabled elderly woman. And by the end of it, she has to find out. So the police trace the call. She goes there, and it's coming from a cemetery.
Yeah,
And
I remember that very
so,
well.
yeah,
And it is
so
a
it was
story. I have a collection
Yeah.
of Richard Matheson's. It's like a complete collection omnibus that's signed, and that story is in it as well.
So
Yeah.
yeah, very similar feel to it, except that one, of course, has a lot more suspense because she doesn't know who's calling. We know who's calling in this movie.
Mhm.
So there's not even any suspense.
Well, if you're going to go to phone movies, you could do Sorry, Wrong Number too with Barbara Stanwyck. I just did that one. I just watched that one, actually. It's not about a call from the grave, but it is a woman being terrorized by her phone because she's an invalid and she's in bed. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, we did that during COVID as a live theater thing.
Right.
on
You
Zoom.
told me that. That's very cool. I honestly, the rest of mine are all Stephen King keys,
Okay.
because we've talked about how closely related this is to a coming of age story, which he's written plenty. Stand By Me probably being the most popular, which for those of you folks out there that don't know, it's actually called The Body.
The novel.
The movie
or the novella.
adaptation is called Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned how the book it came from is kind of a reflection of this book as far as popularity and all the stories being turned into movies. You mentioned Apt Pupil. I mentioned Stand By Me, or The Body, but I want to mention one that Stephen King had from last year, a book called Fairy Tale, which is another story about a father and a son and the loss of the mother in the family. She gets hit by a car on her way home from getting some fried chicken down at a store in their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the story evolves into something much more complex, but it is the story of a father and a son discovering.
What's the name of it again?
Called Fairy Tale. And it
What's
was
Bag of Bones? Isn't that Stephen King?
It is, but that's a totally different story.
But
Bag of Bones is about a lake
doesn't-
and a cabin.
Yeah, but doesn't he remember his wife being killed in that? Because I read that. And I think,
Maybe, but it has more to do with, I think, the ghost of a slave woman, if I'm not mistaken, and the bones maybe
Right,
in the
but I
lake
think-
or something.
I think the setup was he's so susceptible because he just lost his wife. And she
It
was
could
killed in a
be.
car
It could
accident.
be.
Yeah. So again, Stephen King in car accidents, not a good
But
thing.
I don't think there's a kid in that.
No, I think it's just him.
No,
But
the reason
I was
Fairy
thinking
Tale
of
reminds
losing
me
the
so
wife.
much is the
Yeah.
father-son dynamic. Because
Yeah,
they're like the
mentor
same
kind of thing.
age.
Yeah.
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 So Fairy Tale is a big one for me. Oh, you know what? I may have said something wrong. This is not Stephen King, but it's also kind of Monkey's Paw-esque. Almost Pet Sematary-esque. As you mentioned Pet Sematary earlier, it is much more scary. But the reason I say that it's Monkey Paw / Pet Sematary-esque is that he keeps going back to the phone, knowing it's not good, that it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Even when he puts it up in his closet and moves out
In
of
the
the house
box.
and everything
Yes.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a huge Monkey's Paw / Pet Cemetery vibe from that. So that's probably my last key, actually.
Well, and my other one, again, the Stephen King thing is Apt Pupil, of course. Add that one
Mhm.
in there because it's the same thing. He keeps, even though this guy is obviously getting off on the cruelty he's communicating or the stories he's telling, he keeps going back to it. So that was mine. And you'll hate this reference, and I'm not really sure how to justify it, but it came to me, so I wrote it down as a
Oh,
key,
no.
which is these.
Oh no, it's not Zack Snyder. It's not what is it? It's going to be something horrible.
if this didn't have the Stephen King moniker to it, if this just, we didn't know any affiliation to Stephen King or horror or whatever, this could really be almost like a Hallmark movie because it's a coming of age story that is very relevant and very well told, although Hallmarks aren't. But except for the last act, it has a lot of those same qualities of structure and setup and everything.
I know what you're saying.
It's just hard for me to.
Yeah, it's hard for you to say it because it's directed by an Academy Award winner and it's a beautiful movie with great acting in it. So it's not really a Hallmark movie, but it could be along the lines of another coming of age movie that's not horror, like Sounder or one of those type movies from the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? About a boy and his dog, or a boy who lost his father, or what have you. Yeah. I see where you're going. I wouldn't necessarily say Hallmark movie, though.
I thought it was okay, I agree. You're right.
Because it's too good to be a Hallmark movie. I mean, the story
I struggle
alone,
that he had all of this literary stuff in the first half of the movie, and then there's not really any of it in the last half.
Now, that would have been nice to tie in if there would have been something from a story he had read to Mr. Harrigan. Because if you go into IMDb, I didn't put all this in my notes, but it lists like the 7 or 8 titles he reads to him on screen.
Which I have in my notes. I thought that was an interesting choice by the director to actually show subtitles of the actual title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very interesting. Maybe because we don't want people to think that we want people to know what the source material is.
Or if they know the story, maybe see a nugget of something that's similar to this story.
Yeah. And to your point, it might have been interesting if he had done that as like an epilogue, like Stand By Me, like you said. If it had been Craig's voiceover and he's reading the very end of a novel that would be appropriate for throwing the phone away and going on with his life.
You're just reminding me, there's so many nuances of this film that I love that we're skipping over. Like, the fact that Craig says he wants to be a screenwriter and Mr. Harrigan is like not a fan of that idea. But we also learned that Mr. Harrigan leaves him $800,000 in a trust so that he can be a screenwriter if that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, he pays for his college he said for 4 years and 2 years after to find his footing.
Postgraduate work. Yeah. I was like, damn. So many things about this story I love. I love when he goes back to Mr. Harrigan's closet that he was never allowed to go into. He sees that it's an homage to Mr. Harrigan's mother, who he lost as well, which is probably why Mr. Harrigan chose him to be the kid that reads to him, because he had just lost his mother. And then when he goes back and has the conversation with the housekeeper, and she says, he took care of us. And she mentions the one guy that he fired. But then she says, is there something you would like? And he's like, I don't know, an orchid. What do you take? There's so much in that house.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and the more I'm glad we've done it and talked about it, because now it kind of makes me want to go watch it again.
I would, if I were you.
See it from a different perspective, because without the hype of, I'm just waiting for the scare. Sort of thing.
You don't.
And just
I'm telling you, I think this movie will age well. This movie will be on Turner Classic Movies. I guarantee it.
Okay, sure. Any more keys?
No, I'm done. I've said my piece. I've already done a testimonial about how much I love this movie in a former Coming to Get You, or not Coming to Get You. It was one of my genre weeks, but
genre weeks. Yeah.
So
that's what we think, Tim and I. I've gone to love it more, or like it more after we've had this discussion. And Tim loves it and thinks it's awesome. And we want to know what you guys think. So whether you're new or old to us or whatever, leave a comment down below. Comments always help us, and we would love to hear from you guys. If you don't want to do a comment that everybody can see, you could email us and just email us and let us know what you think. Do you like the movie? What do you not like about it? If you don't like about it, we want to know about that. We also encourage you to go to the website. You can look up all 7 seasons that we have and what we've done and find your favorites or your least favorites and see what we think of them. We also have a Patreon channel where if you feel like supporting the podcast and the YouTube channel a little bit more, we would love to have you as a patron with us. And for limited money, you get all kinds of special stuff. We even have special other podcasts there, like the Dilithium Chamber, which does classic Star Trek, and X-Files Declassified, which we're delving into the X-Files episode by episode. It's kind of fun and neat. And Tim, hopefully next time we'll be doing, actually next time we have something totally different, don't we?
Yes. Last year, we decided that we would branch out a little bit into not just horror and science fiction, but a little bit on the peripheral, which is suspense and fantasy. And next week, we're going to Fantasyland.
We're going to Fantasyland on an e-ticket or whatever.
It is an e-ticket, that's for sure. So, and it's a double feature too.
It's a double feature too. Yeah. So next time, next episode, make sure you're ready for a lengthy one because we got to talk about 2 movies.
And a good one. I watched it last night.
Oh yes. And we'll see you then.
All righty. See you then.
All right.
Can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.